Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Gallatin County Republican Women's first ever Facebook live stream. I would like to mention today that during the primary, Gallatin County Republican Women does not endorse any specific candidate, and all candidates speaking today have filed with the Montana Secretary of State's office. So let's get started. We are pleased to present to you 4 Republican candidates running for Montana Secretary of State. Those candidates are in alphabetical order: Bowen Greenwood, Christy Jacobson, Forrest Mandeville, and Scott Sales. Each candidate will have 5 minutes to discuss topics of importance to them. After all candidates have had an opportunity to speak, we will then have a Q&A session. So our first candidate today is Bowen Greenwood. Bowen is a 4th-generation Montanan and was born in Helena and serves the people of Montana as our elected Republican clerk of the Montana Supreme Court. Before being elected as clerk, he was the executive director of the Montana Republican Party and a freelance writer. He is also a novelist and published his first book entitled Death of Secrets, a #1 bestseller political thriller on Amazon. Please welcome Bowen Greenwood.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for that great introduction. I really appreciate it. As Carol said, my name is Bowen Greenwood. I am a candidate for Secretary of State as a Republican, and I'd like to take a few minutes to tell you about myself. I currently have the honor to serve you as your elected Republican clerk of the Montana Supreme Court. I'm the first Republican who's been able to win that seat for us in 30 years. And part of the job of the clerk of the Montana Supreme Court is that we are like the front door of the Montana Supreme Court. When any case gets appealed to the court, it starts in our office. And a part of that job is I get to administer an oath of office to new attorneys whenever they join the bar. A lot of people don't know lawyers take an oath of office, but they do. And I get to swear in new lawyers, which was a huge disappointment to me because when I ran for the job, I thought I was going to get to swear at lawyers. And it's a lot easier to tell jokes when there's a live audience to laugh at it. But seriously, I am your clerk of the Montana Supreme Court. My name is Bowen Greenwood, and I'm running for Secretary of State. So why am I running for Secretary of State? Let me tell you why. Because I believe I offer the people of Montana something that's unique to the candidates you're going to see in this forum today. I have a combination that I don't think anybody else can offer you. First of all, I worked in the office before. From 2006 until early 2009, I was the press secretary there. I'm experienced at being in the Secretary of State's office. I know how it works. I can walk in and start making effective conservative change on day one. And number 2, I have a record of running a state office in a fiscally conservative manner. The clerk of the Supreme Court's office is under budget since I came on board and moving downward. That's a record I will take with me to the Secretary of State's office. That's a record you can rely on. We're going to run things on time and under budget. Number 3, I was just elected to a statewide office a year and a half ago. What that means is Montanans have already voted for me once. It creates a bond of trust that we as a party can take advantage of in the general election. And let me tell you why. Because we cannot afford to let the Democrats win this seat. It's gotten to be a month or so or 2 months or so out of date, but I think probably a lot of us will remember the disaster of the Democrat Iowa caucuses. Days and days with no results, confusion about failing apps, untested technology. We cannot trust Democrats to run our elections. For another example, take Montana right now, where progressives are trying to undo the Ballot Interference Prevention Act, which prevents ballot harvesting. Right now, progressives are trying to take that away from us and expose our people to corrupt ballot harvesting again. That is why we cannot trust the left to run our elections. The Secretary of State is Montana's chief elections official, and we must keep our elections office in Republican hands if we want any sense of fair play. So I believe this office is uniquely important to win. I believe I have a combination of experience and record and background that will win it for us in the or in the general election that makes me your best possible candidate right now. Let me just take a moment or two to tell you a little bit about me. I'm a 4th generation Montanan. I was born in Helena, grew up in Billings. So if anybody's online from Billings, go Bears. I went off to college, and when I was done, 1994, I came back home to Montana and I knocked my first door for a Republican legislative candidate. 1994, and I've been doing it ever since. I have been in the trenches working to elect Republicans to win races for us. If anybody out there says they've been working in Montana Republican politics longer, I probably know them because it's not possible to go to so many of the same events and not meet each other. I have a record of working for you. I have a record of working for you successfully, and I would like to be your candidate for Secretary of State. So thank you very much for your time today. Thanks for doing your duty as good citizens and educating yourself about the candidates. Hopefully we'll have a chance to talk in person soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bowen. Our next candidate for Secretary of State is Christy Jacobson. Christy is a native Montanan and was born and raised in Helena, Montana. She lives today with her family. Christy was educated in Montana, receiving a degree from Carroll College and a master's degree in public administration from the University of Montana. She started her career in the telecom industry, but has almost 2 decades of experience in leadership for state government. Christy currently is the Deputy Secretary of State. Please welcome Christy Jacobson.
Hi, everybody out there on Facebook. Thank you so much for joining us today. A special thank you to the Gallatin County Republican Women for hosting this event. And a special thanks to Carol and Stacy and Jeff for making this possible with social distancing today. I'd also like to take a minute to thank all the frontline workers who are battling the coronavirus, and also let everybody that has the coronavirus, my thoughts and prayers are with you. As a state and as a nation, we will come together and get through this. I'd like to share a little bit about myself. My name is Christy Jacobson. I was born and raised in Helena, where my husband and I raised our 5 kids. I graduated from Capitol High School, Carroll College, and earned a master's degree from the University of Montana in public administration. I have 20 years of leadership experience. The current Secretary of State, Corey Stapleton, endorses me as his replacement. I've also had another recent endorsement from the late Governor Mart's sister, Penny Barney, which I'm very proud of both of those endorsements. In the last 3 years, as the Deputy Secretary of State, we've eliminated 50,000 errors in business filings. We've reduced staff by 1/3, and we've saved millions of dollars in doing so. We've improved the integrity of our election system. As your next Secretary of State, I will oppose automatic online voter registration, which is the gateway to illegal immigrants voting. I will also support voter identification. I will be a conservative vote on the land board, and I support the development of our natural resources. I'm the most qualified candidate for this office, and I possess all of Montana's conservative values. Vote for me, Christy Jacobson. Thank you.
Thank you, Christy. Our next candidate for Secretary of State is Forrest Mandeville. Forrest was born and raised in Columbus, Montana, where he lives today with his family, and he is a small business owner. In 2014, Forrest was elected to serve the people of House District 57, Stillwater, and Eastern Sweetgrass counties. He has chaired the House State Administration Committee the last 2 sessions. Forrest is also in his third interim serving on the State Administration and Veterans Affairs Interim Committee. Please welcome Forrest Mandeville.
Thank you. And it's great to be here. I want to first start out by thanking the Gallatin County Republican Women for putting this on. You know, it's been challenging over the last couple of weeks, abiding by the social distance requirements. It's really put a damper on campaigning. We've seen a lot of these Lincoln Reagan dinners and meet and greets get canceled or postponed. So I really appreciate the opportunity to be able to speak with you this way today. So a little bit about me, and thank you for the great introduction. I am Forrest Mandeville. I was born and raised in Columbus, Montana. I'm a fourth generation Columbus resident and Montana resident as well. I graduated from college. I taught English in China for a little while. Don't worry, I didn't bring back any weird diseases. This was several years ago. I was able to move back to Montana and find a job in my hometown where I still work. I'm currently a consultant right in Columbus. My wife and I were married in 2012. We have 3 children now. Stephen is 6, Matthew is 4, Emmeline is 2. So that's what I do when I'm not campaigning. So why should you support me for Secretary of State? Well, I'm not running for a title. I'm not running because I'm bored and I need something to do. I'm running to serve you in Helena. Now, you've heard the president talk about Washington, D.C. and describe it as a swamp. Well, you know what? Helena is an absolute cesspool. We need new conservative Republican leadership in Helena. We need someone that's not afraid to stand up to the old guard establishment, who's not afraid to rock the boat to get good conservative things done. The Secretary of State now does 3 main things. Number one, and the one you'll probably hear the most about today, is elections. Well, I've been chair of the House State Administration Committee for the last 2 sessions, and that has put me on the front lines fighting against some of these terrible Democrat ideas like automatic voter registration or online voter registration. I've also, we need, and I've supported a voter ID requirement. You know, right now, you can vote in Montana using your utility bill as voter ID. That is absolutely ludicrous, and we need to change that. And as your Secretary of State, I'll fight to change that. We need to ensure that we can vote in person on a paper ballot. That is the most secure way to vote. And we need to end same-day voter registration. Those are the things I will do as your Secretary of State. Next, business services. I am a small businessman. I understand how small business operates. And I am the only candidate running for Secretary of State that understands what it means to rely on your small business to feed your family, to take care of your livelihood. I rely on my small business for my income, and I'm the only candidate running that can say that. And in this era of uncertainty, I mean, I feel for the small businesses, especially in the hospitality industry. My heart breaks for them. This is a terrible time to be dealing with these challenges. But it's hitting all small businesses. I was talking to my mechanic earlier this week. They've had massive projects put on hold because of the economy. Personally, I've seen projects postponed, meetings canceled. If I'm in Secretary of State, when I'm your Secretary of State, small business will not only have a friend in the office, it will have a peer. Next, land board. Now, the district I represent, Stillwater County and Sweetgrass County, includes the Stillwater Mine. I am a strong supporter of natural resource development. I understand the benefits that mining and natural resource development brings to our towns, our communities, our schools, our counties. We need to ensure that the treasures in the treasure state are used for production, be it mining, agriculture, oil and gas extraction, logging. And on the land board, I will fight for those issues. MandevilleForMontana.com is my website. You can also find me on Facebook, Mandeville for Montana. I look forward to talking with you today, and be sure to find me online. Thank you.
Thank you, Forrest. Our last candidate for Secretary of State is Senator Scott Sales. Scott has owned and operated a small custom haying business and also raised a small herd of cattle. Scott ran successfully for the Montana House of Representatives in 2002 and was reelected 3 times. He successfully ran for the Montana Senate in 2012 and currently serves in that capacity. Scott was elected by his peers to the position of Speaker of the House in 2006, Minority Leader in 2008, and has been President of the Senate since 2016. Scott is currently on the Executive Board of the Republican Party and the State Legislative Leadership Foundation. He is a lifetime member of the NRA and the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation. please welcome Senator Scott Sales.
Well, I want to thank the Montana Republican Party. Well, I should say specifically the Montana or the Gallatin County Republican. Well, there we got that. Anyway, I'm glad to be here. It's been a little trying to try to get out and communicate with the folks around the state. I've been traveling the last couple of weeks, putting up signs. Put up 20 of them in Yellowstone County day before yesterday, and there's a few around Bozeman all the way up to Helena. Anyway, Forrest did a great job talking about the responsibilities of the Secretary of State's office. So I'm going to tell you, instead of reiterating that, tell you why you might want to consider myself. I have more business experience in the private sector than all my competition combined. Like was said in my introduction, I worked for Hewlett Packard. I worked for Extended Systems over roughly a 20-year period of time. I know what it takes for the business community to do well, and one of the responsibilities obviously deals with business registration. We need to continue to improve upon that, make it easier and more effective for our business community to navigate the Secretary's office, and there are no impediments to business creation. The second thing that I think I have is this agricultural background. As mentioned, I've had my own little custom haying business, and for many years I had a set of cows. I am the only candidate running as a Republican or Democrat, for that matter, that have any connection to the land whatsoever. When my career ended in 2001, and I went to work part-time for the Bozeman Stockyard down here, did that for a number of years. So I know firsthand what the challenges are for the agricultural community and how important that land board is and the people that utilize the state lands for the benefit of our schools. It's a constitutional obligation that we have to maximize the amount of revenue for the schools from the use of those lands. And I have a long record of being pro-resource development and pro-property rights, and would carry that private sector business experience along with my agricultural experience and my voting record in Helena to the land board. And lastly, I have this leadership experience that none of my competitors can point to. Served in the legislature for a long period of time. I have over roughly 120 current and former legislators that have endorsed my candidacy for Secretary of State. When I'm traveling the state, I stay with these individuals. They give me the opportunity to meet with their friends and their neighbors, and it's been great to have that support. I'll take these relationships that currently I have right into the Secretary of State's office, where I can work with them on issues like rolling back same-day voter registration. I might say that back in 2005, when the Secretary of State's office was asleep at the switch and allowed same-day voter registration and mail ballots to pass, I voted against both those issues. I had the judgment at that time to see that that wasn't going to serve the people of Montana well, and I might add I was only one of 8 people in the legislature that voted against same-day voter registration. But those relationships are vital. There was a bill that passed the House out of Forrest Mandeville's committee that allowed for motor voter. If the minute you signed up for a driver's license, you automatically got registered to vote. It passed out of his committee, unfortunately. It passed the full House, and it came over to the Senate. I tied it up in committee with the help of my conservative friends in the State Administration Committee. And then, fortunately, we had enough votes to kill it on a blast motion on the second to the last day. That is the gateway drug for illegal voting, and I'm glad to say that through my leadership and the leadership of other individuals in the state Senate, we were able to do away with that idea. Anyway, I appreciate your time. I appreciate being able to represent the good people of Gallatin County and Broadwater County and northeast portion of Lewis and Clark County. I appreciate your support. If you have more questions, obviously you can go out to scottssalesformontana.com. Also, I'm on Facebook, and you can always give me a call, 579-7994. Anyway, I appreciate your time, and I appreciate your attention, and I'd appreciate your vote. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Scott, and thank you to all of our candidates. That was great. So we are now going to begin our question and answer session. If you have any questions and you have a Facebook account, please ask them now. In the meantime, we have received a few questions by email, so I will start with some of those questions. The first question is for Bowen Greenwood. Bowen, less than 1.5 years ago, the people of Montana elected you to a statewide office. Now you are asking these same people to elect you to a different statewide office. So my question is, what guarantee do we have that you will not do the same thing again? And then Bowen also has a list of 3 additional questions that he's going to respond to. Bowen?
Well, hi again, everybody, and thank you for those great questions. First, on the subject of running for office again, don't try it. If you want to know why I won't be doing this again, it's because it's really hard to run this many times in a row. But seriously, folks, this election year is unique. The Montana Secretary of State's office is our elections office, and we cannot let it fall into Democrat hands. Our current Secretary of State is a Republican. He's running for a different office, so we are exposed here. We are vulnerable. And when you have a situation where you cannot afford to lose, that's where you want your strongest possible card to play. I believe my combination of experience and a proven record as a fiscal conservative is what's going to win us this office in the general election, and that's why I'm running. If I didn't care about winning the general, I would be perfectly content to serve where I am. But I believe we cannot afford to lose this office. That being said, I also want to add the rest of the questions, which I should probably have brought the piece of paper with me, but that's all right. There was a question about quote unquote early voting, which I think in Montana really refers to permanent absentee ballots. Look at this, which I think in Montana really refers to permanent absentee ballots. And I would just like to say in Montana right now, we have one of the best possible election systems in the world. Number one, we rely on paper ballots. They're not hackable. They can't be taken over by the Russians or the Ukrainians. It's the gold standard. We have it. We need to protect it. The other part of our system that's so great is that if you want to vote early, if you want to mail in your ballot, in Montana you can. But if you want the extra security of going to the polling place and showing a photo ID to vote, you have that option as well. And my commitment to you as a candidate for your chief elections office is that I will protect that right to vote in person at the polling place on election day, no matter what. If you value that right, I am your candidate. I want to briefly touch on the question about Native American reservations. Bush versus Gore in the Montana Supreme Court requires that ballots be processed in the same way in every jurisdiction in the state, and especially as regards race. So one of my plans as the Secretary of State is to ensure that ballots are not being processed any differently on reservations than they are in other communities. And the final question is the land board. Your job as a member of the land board, and my job if I'm elected, is to maximize income from the state trust lands for education. That's what I'm going to do. You'll hear a lot of Democrats who care about the land board as a means to express environmentalism and do something about global warming, but that's not your job. You take an oath to do your fiduciary duty to maximize income for the state school trust, and that's what I'm going to do. So I appreciate your time. Thank you very much. Hopefully we'll have a chance to talk in person, and thanks again to the Gallatin County Republican Women.
Thank you, Bowen. The next question is for Christy Jacobson. Your closest opponent in terms of fundraising is the upcoming primary is Senate President Scott Sales. He has 3 times the number of Montana-based contributors as you have. When you eliminate the personal loan amounts for both candidates, he has raised almost twice as much money as you have for the upcoming Republican primary election for the office of Secretary of State. In light of this information, how can you be so disingenuous as to have your website state, quote, Christy leads the pack, end quote, as it relates to fundraising? Christy?
Hi again, everybody. Thank you so much for the great questions today. My opponent, his fundraising efforts, they come from political action committees, career politicians, lobbyists, and his own personal money. I led the pack in my fundraising efforts from a grassroots level as a political outsider, and I'm very proud of doing that. Also, I did it in half the time. The next question on early voting, I am an absolute advocate for allowing people to show up at the polls and to vote in person and not take that right away from them. And I will continue to be an advocate for all of those people that like to show up at the polls and the election judges that like to have their eyes on the polls and observe and make sure that everything is, all the directions are being followed. As far as the voting on the Native American reservations, we do not have an issue with voter suppression. Montana is very special, and we make it very easy for everybody in Montana to vote. So there is no voter suppression. We just have to follow the guidelines and make sure that everybody in the state is following the direction that's set forth by the Secretary of State's office. On the last question, the top issues for the land board, I wholeheartedly support development of our natural resources, and I think we can do a better job in this state of developing our natural resources. And I will be a conservative vote on the land board to develop those natural resources and generate more monies for our schools. Thank you.
Our next question is for Forrest Mandeville. The question has to do with a critical responsibility that falls to the Secretary of State. That is election security. During the last legislative session, we had HB 147. This bill was drafted to put on the ballot this November a legislative referendum that would allow the citizens of Montana to decide if they wanted the state of Montana to make sanctuary cities legal or illegal in Montana. My question is, why were you one of only a handful of Republicans who voted with all the Democrats in the House to kill the bill?
Hi, thank you for the question. So first, I'd encourage everyone to go read that bill. The reason given to us to support that bill was that we needed it on the ballot to increase voter turnout. Yes, increase voter turnout in a presidential year with President Donald Trump running for re-election, with Senator Steve Daines running for re-election, with an open governor seat, etc., etc. We did not need that bill to increase voter turnout. If we can't increase voter turnout with the seats that are on the top of the ballot, well, then we're in trouble anyway. A bill like that is best used in an off-year election when voter turnout is more of an issue. It'd be best to use that in 2 years. And hey, if we have a Republican governor, maybe we can pass that in the legislature with the governor's signature instead of vetoing it like has been done in the past. That would be the best way to pass that bill. So look at who else voted for that bill, though. Not radical liberals. Representatives like Representative Manzella, Representative Nolan, Representative Lenz. Go look at who voted for that bill. They're not radical liberals. And look, anytime you're in the legislature, anytime you're in a voting body, you're going to have a voting record. And you're not going to agree with everyone's voting record. In fact, you shouldn't agree with everyone's voting record. There should be some difference of opinion in there. So look at my voting record, look at the whole of my voting record, look where I've scored on scorecards. On conservative scorecards, I score high. On liberal scorecards, I'm consistently low and proud of it. The next questions I'll go through. Early voting. Absentee voting is fine for those who want it, those who like it, those who need it. I'm not against absentee voting. But what we need to do, what we absolutely need to do, is ensure that those who want to vote at a polling place can do so. That people can go, mark their ballot, turn it in, see it the whole way. That's the most secure way to vote. That's the best way to vote. We need to maintain that as much as we can. For the reservations, voting on reservations, what we have to understand is there's a lot of federal law when it comes to reservations. There's a lot of federal court cases that we have to follow, which ties the state's hands to an extent. But there are things we can do. And one of the main things is communication with the local clerks and recorders to make sure that that everyone's on the same page about what the requirements are and how to best implement election policies, and also communication with tribal leaders. And that's what I, as Secretary of State, will do. Finally, top issues on the land board. Well, this is something I talked about in my introduction. This is something that's very important to me. We need to stop the radical environmentalists from tying up the production in the treasure state. we need to use the treasures of this state to help our communities, to provide good paying jobs, to help our school districts. You know, an environmentalist is someone who likes everything until you propose to do it. You know, they love renewable resources, but as soon as you try to build a hydroelectric dam, well, they don't like that. The fish can't swim upstream anymore. So now they're against that. So you put in wind turbines. They love that, right? Wind power. As soon as you put them up, they don't like it because it kills too many eagles or bats or mosquitoes or something. So an environmentalist, they're going to tell you they have all of these great ideas if you'll just listen to them, but they will not like any of them once they're finally proposed. So we need to ensure that our lands are being developed, are being used to the best of their abilities. Thanks again.
Thank you, Forrest. So our last question is for Senator Scott Sales. You were recently quoted as saying you think the upcoming primary election should be an all-mail ballot election. Could you please explain why you think that should be the case?
You bet. I appreciate the question. About a little over a week and a half ago, I submitted a press release urging the governor to consider going to an all-mail ballot specifically for the primary, not unilaterally for all elections, but just for this primary. And the reason why I came up with that suggestion was that the individuals that typically come and vote on election day are the more elderly people. My age and a little bit older. It's a social activity for them. They like to do it, but they're also, the statistics show that they're also the most vulnerable portion of our population. So, and in conjunction with that, the election judges and the people that work the polls on that day, typically, once again, are in that 70 plus age group. And once again, they are the most vulnerable to this virus that's going around. So in the interest of common good, in the interest of public health, I thought that for this one election, we should give the county commissioners, working in conjunction with the public health officials and the election administrators, the responsibility and opportunity to call for all-mail ballot for their county if they choose to. The needs are different from one county to another. Quite possibly if you're in Power County or Petroleum County or Sweetgrass County, you think that you can keep the social distancing and you can do a polling place safely, then by all means let the counties that think they can do that continue to do it. But others like Gallatin or Yellowstone, where 80+% of the people are currently voting by mail, I think it's just prudent that we give these people the option to make that decision at the local level. I was glad to see that the governor a couple days ago took my idea and decided to implement it. So he is giving the counties the opportunity right now to make preparations to do an all-mail ballot if they choose. If you have an opinion in this area, call your county commissioners, call your election administrators, work with them to make sure that your voice is heard in this area. But this is the type of leadership I think the Secretary of State's office needs and the type of leadership that I will bring. On the other questions pertaining to early voting, like I said earlier, I was one of just a handful of people in 2005 that voted against same-day voter registration. My opinion is that cost us the election of Conrad Burns in 2006, and that's why we have John Tester. I know there's a big push to roll that back to the Friday before. I would be a strong advocate of that. And like I said before, I have these relationships with the people that are going to be serving in the legislature, both House and Senate, that I think that we can get that bill passed. And if we have a Republican governor, we can get that signed into law. I think that people should have some personal responsibility. And I don't think it's too much to ask that people get down to the courthouse and apply to register to vote the Friday before the election. We know that people that want to go hunting on opening day, we have no problem with saying, hey, you have to have a license on that day, and it needs to be purchased in advance of you going hunting or going fishing. How much more important is our right to vote? I don't think it's too much to ask our citizens to show a little personal responsibility, and that is something that I can get done as Secretary of State, providing we have Republican in the legislature and a Republican on the second floor in the governor's office. The third thing, the question regarding the Indian reservations, that's a very complex question because because of state law, federal law, and court rulings that have shown that the tribes and the designated reservations are completely dependent, but also completely autonomous or sovereign, I might add. So it's a very thorny issue. It's hard to get your hands around, but certainly I will work to the best of my ability to maintain the integrity and security of the system, whether it's on the reservation or off the reservation, working in conjunction with the 56 clerks and recorders / election administrators. I'm one of the few people who have taken the time over the last few months to travel the state. I've met face-to-face with 46 of the 56. I can tell you that the vast majority, all but 2, have voted interest in rolling back same-day voter registration. I've developed a plan for doing that. Also, I can work with these clerks and recorders that have reservations on their counties and to try to make sure that that is as streamlined as possible and that there's the least amount of security issues dealing with the voting on the reservation. And the final question regarding the land board, it's probably the second most important part of the job in my opinion. Like I said before, I have a very strong voting record in the legislature supporting the environmentally conscious development of our natural resources. We have some of the strongest laws in the state, or I should say in the nation. And I'm very attuned to the fact that we want to have clean water and clean land, or clean air, but we can have it all. We can have natural resource development that will pay for our schools to a large extent. Recently, a $46 million check was written to from the state to the public schools. We can do more resource development. We can do more timber harvest. And the other side of it, there's about 7 million acres. We can also work to try to allow as much public access on this land as possible. The land is owned by the citizens of the state for the benefit of the schools. That's the top priority. But the other thing is that where we can allow people to access that land for recreational purposes, I'm all about getting that done as well. So appreciate the questions.
I would like to thank all of our candidates and audience for joining us today. I hope that we provided you with insight into each candidate and the issues that are important to them. This video and additional information on each candidate will be at our website at GallatinCountyRepublicanWomen.com. I would also like to extend a big thank you to Jeff Bent at Obsidian Realty Group for providing the space and equipment for today's Facebook live stream. Jeff, you are amazing and we are truly grateful. I'd like to mention a few upcoming events. The Gallatin County Republican Central Committee and Gallatin County Republican Women are co-sponsoring a speed campaigning event on April 18th at the Best Western Grand Tree Hotel from 5:30 to 8 o'clock. Please go to GallatinCountyRepublicanWomen.com website for details. On April 30th, the Gallatin County Republican Women will be having a luncheon at Riverside Country Club with a mix of local candidates. Watch for your email for additional information. And lastly, it is almost impossible to go through life today without thinking about the coronavirus. I pray for all of those afflicted with the coronavirus across the world and hope for their recovery. I am thankful for President Trump and his task force working for the health and safety of all Americans. We pray that the lockdown will soon end and that we may taste our freedom once again, because we are all about freedom. So thank you very much. This concludes our Facebook live stream, and I am very thankful that all of you joined us today. Until next time, thank you.